Welcome back to the shed. I mentioned several times on this channel that I'm a huge Robert Silverberg fan, but for some reason I've only covered Robert Silverberg once on this channel so far. So to make things right, tonight we're going to take a look at the 1980 Locus award-winning novel by Robert Silverberg in Lord Valentine's Castle. So what I would like to do is provide a bit of a plot overview, talk to what I liked, what I didn't like, I'll make some recommendations, and then we'll give this one a ranking. So the novel begins with this guy called Valentine coming up to the city Pedrud. And on his way there, he meets this small shepherd boy who's got some flock of these mounts. They call them mounts. There's some genetically modified animals that resemble a horse. Really interesting. And I might talk to that when I talk to my likes and some of the technology that goes on in this novel. But they're on their way to Pedrud and he befriends this boy. And we soon realize that there's a lot of gaps in Valentine's memory. He doesn't know how long he's been on the road, but he seems to be pretty carefree. He doesn't really have any concern. He's just going with the flow. But he's also very naive. He doesn't seem to understand the value of money or really what's going on in the city, because he doesn't even realize that the city is in this huge festival state, because we have the ruler of Majipoor, the world in which this novel is set, on his procession. So he's taken a procession, having recently been made emperor or ruler of this world, Majipoor. So he's on this procession across this huge world, basically greeting and meeting all the citizens of the planet. And now when Valentine first sees the coronal, he gets this sense of dread completely overtaking him. At first he's a bit puzzled. He's not quite sure why. He has some resentment to power, it appears, but he has this complete sense of dread overrule him, almost overwhelm him. But he sort of shakes that off as thinking, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just the power of seeing such a great ruler that has overwhelmed me. So Valentine, in his journeys, comes across this group of jugglers, and they're made up from different alien races, and they've got some kind of quota where they need to have at least, I think it was 2 or 3 humans within the troop for it to be legal status and earn money within Majipoor. So we soon learn that Valentine has got some pretty good eye and hand coordination, so some pretty strong skills that makes him well suited to be a juggler. And having this curfew, or at least this restriction where this group of alien jugglers need some humans in their troops, they quickly enlist Valentine, and he joins their crew traveling Majipoor, learning to juggle and trying to understand exactly how he's feeling and who he is, right? He seems to have some kind of amnesia. One of his juggling cohorts seems to be a wizard of sorts. He's not truly a wizard, he's an alien, but he has what almost seems to be magical powers. And we find that Majipoor is a really fascinating world, this blend of science fiction and fantasy, because their dreams have a very strong and potent effect on the population of Majipoor. So we find that anyone who breaks the laws or needs to be corrected in some ways has dreams or sendings by the king of dreams, they call him, who seems to be the authoritarian one, the one who sends really troubling dreams. And on the other hand, we have the lady of the isle, who's the coronel's mother, who also send dreams, but they tend to be more comforting and revealing of hidden truths. So Valentine's been getting all his dreams, and he's not quite sure if they're originating from the king of dreams or from the lady of the isle, and he's all conflicted. But what he does understand is that these dreams are really powerful, and they're not just your ordinary dreams. These must be sending somehow. And we find that this alien creature, this wizard, sort of sees an aura, sees something about Valentine, and draws nearer to him and tries to help him interpret his dreams. And what we learn is that, you know, maybe the life that Valentine thought he had as this carefree juggler is maybe not what destiny has in mind for him. And it's potentially showing that he's come from a great height. There's talk within the juggling crew that he may have been some lord who's come to some trouble and lost his memory. But there seems to be something special about Valentine, and there seems to be something sinister about this Lord Valentine. And the novel really goes on this amazing journey to find out exactly who the rightful heir of Majipoor is, through this wonderful journey, through this wonderful landscape that is Majipoor. So look, I've always thoroughly enjoyed the Majipoor Chronicles, and Lord Valentine's Castle is the first novel, and I think it was 6 all up that was making up the set. And what a wonderful novel the Lord Valentine's Castle is. So what did I like in particular? Look, I think it's fair to say that the Majipoor Chronicles are full of wonderful characters, but for me the highlight has always been the world building. I think Majipoor is an absolutely fantastic piece of world building by Robert Silverberg, and I just love the fact that we've been taken on a ride in this crew of jugglers as they go from quest to quest to try to find the truth in Lord Valentine. And we just see so much of this wonderful world, from their technology, from their history, from their geography, from their government structures. And it's just a wonderful exploration of what is a fantastic, for me, one of the best worlds in the whole science fiction genre. Big claim, but I absolutely loved Majipoor. The other thing I really enjoyed was the character of Valentine. I just think Robert Silverberg is a master in bringing these characters to life. I like the fact that when Valentine was naive and unsure of who he was and what he was doing, he had a different kind of dialogue with his crewmates, his juggling friends. And as he progresses, as he starts to get more revelation of who he may potentially be, we see that the dialogue with his crewmates, as he grows in power and respect within that group of jugglers, we find that the language changes, but he somehow doesn't manage to lose the essence and the innocence that was the Lord Valentine of old. And it just continues evolving this character in a way that doesn't lose what made him so adorable in the first place. So I really liked the characters, and there were several characters like that. I really also enjoyed the juggling brothers, these aliens that had 6 pairs of hands, that were able to do different kinds of feats. We had Sleet, the white-haired guy who had some terrible dream about these metamorphs, which we'll talk to about in a moment. But there are so many secondary characters in this novel that really were the highlight for me as well. The other thing I really enjoyed in this novel is the blend of science fiction and fantasy. This is one of those classic novels that just falls in that little niche that I think just addresses both what is wonderful about science fiction and what is wonderful about fantasy. Because you have all the science fiction, like this world is set something like, I think it was 20,000 years into the future. It's some far distant future. And some of the technology that's on the planet appears to be magic. So we have that fantasy feel to it. We have this, huge quest to find one's inner self and one true self, which is typical of fantasy novels as well. And we have all this technology and alien races, mixed into the light as well, which I just find absolutely awesome. So I really did enjoy the mixture of that science fiction and fantasy. So what's there not to like in Lord Valentine's Castle by Robert Silverberg? Look, there's not really much to like. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I'm a huge Robert Silverberg fan. But I do have to say that sometimes the juggling got a bit too much. Like, I understand why Robert Silverberg was doing it. I know why he used that as an illustration to some of the points that he wanted to make. But I did feel there were certain passages where I was sitting divided as to, is this a little bit too much? I think I've had enough of juggling. So there's a little bit of that in there. But look, that's a minor criticism, one that I was really looking hard to find. But I do have to say that, yeah, it does seem to be a lot of talk and juggling at times. But look, it didn't deter me from my full enjoyment of this one. I will say this though, Lord Valentine's Castle is the first of what is, I think, is 6 or 7 books, right? And it does leave some unanswered questions, or some questions where you're sort of asking yourself, well, that doesn't quite make sense. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't I do something else, right? And it's difficult to talk to without giving spoilers away. But I'd go as far as to say that there are sequels to this that will explain some of the things that happened in this novel and why they took the actions that they did. So I'm hoping that it won't deter you from reading the sequels, because I hope it definitely doesn't deter you from reading this wonderful novel, because that's just really an observation more than it is a criticism, and really a carrot to help you read on with the following sequels to this wonderful novel. So what about recommendations? Whenever I read Lord Valentine's Castle, I always remember Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. It's just one of those classic novels that just bridges both science fiction and fantasy. And we've covered Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun on this channel in the past, where I've been reviewing and ranking all the Hugo and Nebula award-winning novels. So we covered The Claw of the Conciliator here. And this is very similar to that, where it's that blend of science fiction and fantasy that is just, for me, wonderful. I'd say that Gene Wolfe's novel was a little bit more cryptic at times than what you find in Lord Valentine's Castle. This is more straightforward and just a wonderful, enjoyable read. The other obvious recommendation is, if you're a huge Robert Silverberg fan and you've read a lot of his SF book but have been potentially put off by reading fantasy by Robert Silverberg, I'd say don't be deterred. It really is that blend, and you do get everything that makes Robert Silverberg a wonderful science fiction author in a fantasy setting, and you can definitely see the influence, with these galactic aliens on this planet and this wonderful tech that appears to be magic, right? So I think if you're a Robert Silverberg fan and you've been dismissing these series of Majipoor Chronicles, I'd say please have a go. I think you're going to be thoroughly surprised and glad that you did so. Which also takes me to my next recommendation. I think if you're a fantasy fan but you've been a bit put off by the hard science that sometimes comes in these wonderful, for me, science fiction novels, I'd say have a go at Lord Valentine's Castle by Silverberg, because it does read a lot like fantasy, and it does give you that, I think, wonderful introduction to science fiction that is just palatable, and I think you would thoroughly enjoy it. So I'd say have a go at this if you're a big fan of fantasy, wanting to bridge into science fiction but not knowing where to start. So when it comes to ratings, I really had no hesitations ranking this one a good 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I just love Robert Silverberg. I'm so glad I revisited this one after something like 20-year hiatus that I had from it. So really wonderful to revisit this classic novel for me. And I hope I've inspired you to go and search this one out, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. Wonderful novel by Robert Silverberg, who still remains unapologetically one of my favorite science fiction and fantasy writers of all time. Thank you for spending time with me in the shed, and like always, I'll see you next time in the shed.